Okay, well, good evening and welcome everybody to this third open evening or open day, whatever you want to call it. Very welcome, and we would like to get you acquainted with some of the teachers of this educational program. My name is Joop Loomans. Together with Merel Langelaar, we are the program directors of this postgraduate course. Merel will introduce herself a little bit later, but and she is from Utrecht University. I'm from Oculus Insights, and together we've created this course, which is quite extensive. The program for this evening is I'll give you a short introduction, why we created this curriculum, and a few highlights on how that looks in practice. Then we've asked Rob Kieboom, Bob Magnus and Merel, who are all three teachers in this program as well, to tell a little bit about their program and their part in the program, and why they are involved and what the purpose of their education is. And then hopefully we still have a lot of time for questions. One of the reasons why we started this curriculum is, I think, resonates very well in this quote from Miranda Gosling. You might have seen it in the introduction video, but Miranda is an equine vet in United States, and she visited a lot of our business courses that we did as Oculus Insights. And what resonates with me, at least, when I heard her say this is, okay, we finish vet school, we start to work in a practice, or we start a job, we go with the flow, and before we know it, we are part of a company, or we are part of a practice, or we are tied up to a certain job, and we never asked us the question, is this really what we want? Is this really how we want people to look at us? And are we able to be ourselves? And actually, very often reality takes over. And what we would like to do in this course is think a little bit more, help you think a little bit more about your future and the future of our veterinary profession. That's also very clear from a survey from the veterinarians, Federation of Veterinarians in Europe. It's a 2018 survey in the educational program. We will talk a lot about this survey because it has a lot of information regarding our profession and what veterinarians meet in their day-to-day work. But a lot of these veterinarians think that they would have been better off if they would have had more business insights and skills to meet their challenges, their day-to-day challenges. And that's not only for people who are employers, but also for employees. And of course, there's a lot of things happening in the veterinary world, in the veterinary industry, in the animal industry, that's asking us questions on, okay, is this the right direction? Is this where I want to fit in? There's a lot of competition, but there's also a lot of opportunities. And instead of go with the flow, we would like to help you to develop leadership skills that provide insights into the profession, animal owners, consumers, the planet. And that's why we've made this modular structure. It is 5 modules. You probably have seen it already. We start in September, talking about the dynamics of the veterinary marketplace, what's happening out there, where do we fit in, what would be something that we like, that's needed, that we are good at, that we enjoy doing, that makes sense. That's where we start off with in September. But then, if you know this for yourself or your company or your practice, then how do you get there? How do you develop a strategy, and how do you get your staff or your people with you to reach those goals? That's the second module that will start in January 2022. And then the next step, once you have this idea, this vision, you've worked on it, you've created a plan, you've made your own new business plan, or you made a new business, or you have made a plan to develop a new service or a new industry or whatever, then we are going to talk about, okay, how do you run it? how do you run a business successfully? And that also has to do with figures, it has to do with money, it has to do with HR, although HR is a complete different module in itself, which is now module number 4. How do you create a team and how do you lead a team? And the fifth module will be more about, okay, we are there. When are we successful? How do you know that you're successful? How do you compare yourself with other practices or with other industries? How do you move forward? How do you keep evolving? That will be in module number 5. Altogether, it is 4 months per module. In these 4 months, it's 150 hours of work, of which 50 hours are online education. We will come together every Tuesday from 7:30 to 10:30 Central European Time. We will have online lectures. We have a big group of people from various universities, consultancy companies, associations that are going to educate us, to tell us more about what's happening in the marketplace, but we also want to provide the opportunity for you to share your knowledge and your ideas and your thoughts and share them with others and kind of test them with each other. Those will be the 50 hours which are online education. And then there are about 100 hours reading and working on assignments. Every module stops or ends with 2 assignments that you have to work on during your course. And these module assignments are picked together for you and with you. They have to be appropriate and they have to be something. It has to be something that's happening in your place, in your practice. It can be your current working place. It can be something new you would like to create. It can be somebody else's practice or a company or a government institution. And we would like you to implement your new skills, the skills that you've just learned in these modules, in these assignments. We will coach you on the job. We will help you with that. And in the end, you could produce a completely new business plan for a new company that you want to start, or a new practice, or a new service, or a new clinic, whatever. It's important for you to notice that we stop the registration the 1st of August. So if you can register through our university website. You already have the link, otherwise you would not be in this meeting. But this is how to register and how to become part of this group. And I would like to know, before I continue, if there are any questions on this already by the people who are attending now. It would be nice if you have a question to open your camera. If not, then I would love to introduce to you Rob Kieboom. Rob is a consultant. He is a veterinarian as well. I think, Rob, you better introduce yourself, and then I will share my screen with your presentation. Will that work?
Yes, please. And then I will tell you when to switch to the next slide. So yes, my name is Rob Kieboom. I have about 5 minutes to tell you why, as a veterinarian, I became interested in leadership. And I will also tell you which topics will be addressed in the course. So about 30 years ago, I finished my studies as a vet at the University of Utrecht. It took me about 10.5 years to finish my studies. And I worked a very, very short time actually in practice. So only a very short time in practice, but 25 years after that, I've been in leadership training in the veterinary pharmaceutical world for veterinary practitioners, but also a lot of leadership training outside of the veterinary industry. Next slide, please. So when I was a lot younger, I was influenced a lot by the book by Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Some of you might have read it. It has been on the #1 spot of the bestseller list of management books, I think for 20 or maybe even 30 years by now. And the 7 habits are here on the screen. It first says, be proactive as a person. Take responsibility for your actions. The second one, begin always with the end of mind. If you want to be successful, know where you're going to. First things first, know your priorities in life. And don't only do the urgent things, but also the important things. Think win-win. If you help others to succeed, in the end, it will come back to you. It's like karma. You will succeed when others succeed around you. The 5th habit may be a difficult one for a lot of vets, because we were trained to solve problems. But it says, seek first to understand and then to be understood. Well, we are so trained to solve problems and tell immediately what we think that sometimes it's difficult for vets to really understand people, the clients, and the people around you in the practice. The 6th habit, synergize, and that means be able to work in a team. Teamwork is important in all businesses, but seldom people are trained how to work in a team. When I studied to be a vet, it was not trained at all, and it's one of the most important skills to have. It's not easy to work in a team. And as a vet, you're trained to be an excellent individual and to solve problems. But how do you work together? Because then you're much more successful. And of course, you always should seek to sharpen the saw, to develop, never be static, always want to learn more. Now, I can relate personally to all of these 7 habits, but to be honest, the second one, begin with the end in mind, never worked for me. I mean, when I started as a vet, I never could imagine that I would be a leadership training most part of my life. And I'd like to tell you how that came about. So I started as a vet. I wasn't totally thrilled with the work as a vet. What I liked most was the communication part. I liked to talk to the clients. I liked to explain about disease. I didn't have a good diagnostic eye. I wasn't very good in surgery. I did my best, but it gave me a lot of stress. And soon I decided to move over to the pharmaceutical industry. There I made training manuals about products, veterinary products, and I trained the managers in the veterinary company. And I did it for about a year. And I noticed that the manuals that I made weren't really used by the managers because they didn't know how to train people. And they asked me, it's great that you make these manuals, but also train us how to train people. Well, that was new for me. But I started to make a train the trainer training. And I liked it and they liked it. And then they asked me, can you also train us how to lead people, how to coach people? So I did some courses myself. And finally I found my passion. I really like to coach people, to train people how to be a good coach. And that's what I've been doing since. So still, I don't do anything with the end in mind. For me, it's always improvisation and it's a journey and I never know where it leads. So people are different. It doesn't mean that the Covey rules don't apply. I think for most people, they will apply. Next slide, please, Joop. Now, in the program, we will be talking about good leadership. And the question, are you a good leader, is an interesting maybe to ask yourself. It's not an easy question because first you have to talk about what is good leadership. And there's so many different leaders. We have leaders like Jack Welch, pretty dictatorial leaders like Steve Jobs. Or when we talk about football, we're playing the European football ship now, Bob. We have trainers and we have coaches like Louis van Gaal or Mourinho, dictatorial coaches. And we have other coaches that are much more on the background. What is the best leader? Are they leading from the front? Are they servant leaders that help you grow? It's an interesting question and not easy to answer. If we are able to answer that question, the next question is, are you a good leader? And maybe the people who listen now, think for yourself. Do you believe you're a good leader? Next slide, please, Joop. And it's maybe not so interesting what you think yourself about your leadership skills. It's maybe even more important what the people around you say about you. How do they perceive you? Because you might think you're an excellent leader, but everybody around you might disagree. And then probably you're not the best of leader. And the second question, do you think you need to be a good leader as a vet? We didn't become a vet because we thought about leadership, right? But when you're in the practice, you will find out during the course that leadership skills are crucial to be successful, to lead individuals, to help the people develop around you, to be able to lead a team through certain stages of development. Those are very basic skills that will help any practitioner. Yes, Joop? So what topics will be addressed in the course? First of all, if you want to lead other people, I think it's crucial that you understand yourself, that you understand your strength, that you understand your negatives or your pitfalls, and that you understand your challenges in life. And it's not so easy always to understand yourself. And during the course, we will not only discuss models, but we will help you to understand yourself better. Once that step is taken, we can talk about leading others. And I will use some models that have been around for a long time that help you to diagnose people, to diagnose their needs from leadership, and to be flexible and adapt your leadership style to be able to serve their needs. And the third part, what we're going to discuss is, what does that mean for leading your team? And that's not an easy thing to do, but it's very basic theory that will help anybody in later life, I believe. Yes, Joop. Now, how will we do that? And I'm not going to go into the very details, but for knowing yourself, we use the core quality model. And the core quality model has basically 4 models. It talks about your qualities. It talks about your pitfalls, your negatives. It talks about your challenges. And it talks about your allergies in other people. What do you not like in other people? And all these 4 boxes are related together. Now, how do you get input? How do you know about your qualities? How do you know about your pitfall and your challenges? You might have a pretty good idea yourself about yourself. You might know what your skills are and your qualities and where you can develop. But it many times also helps to ask other people. So as pre-work for this module, we asked you to ask other people, at least 10 people around you, to answer a couple of questions about you. Well, this will be dealt with in an anonymous way, but we ask you to ask people what you should continue to do, what you should stop doing, and what you should start to do. And the first question, what should I continue to do, will give you clues about your qualities, because people want you to continue to do that. So it says something about your strength. What should you stop doing says something about your pitfalls, the negatives. And what should I start doing? People will answer some things about your challenges in life. Now, this is already coming pretty close. It's not always easy to get feedback, and we will discuss about that. It's so important if you want to have a successful team that you're able to get feedback and not be defensive, and also that you're able to give constructive feedback. It's not an easy thing to do for veterinarians. It's not an easy thing to do for any managers that I train. But it's very important. And once you're ready with that and you know a little bit more about yourself, you can think about leading other people. Yes, Joop? Now, in leading other people, I use a model that has been around for 50 years or so. It's called situational leadership. In the old days, people thought about leadership in 2 different ways. They called it the X theory and the Y theory. And the X theory says people intrinsically are lazy. As a leader, you need to be behind them with the whip or in front of them with the carrot. You need to punish and reward. That's a very old-fashioned way of looking at leadership, but still a lot of leaders today think that way. It's very dictatorial. The Y theory says the opposite. It says in order to get production from people, you need to trust them. You need to create an environment so they can come to production. That's a positive and optimistic view about human behavior. Well, in the 60s and 70s of the previous century, Ken Blanchard looked at both of the theories and said, well, maybe in some situations you need to be a little bit more X, you need to be a little bit more telling and dictatorial. And in other situations, you need to let go. You need to coach, take your hands from people, trust them to do the job, support them where needed. And maybe in the end, even you can take totally your hands from them. You can delegate tasks without checking them at all. So it depends what kind of leadership style you use. That's what Ken Blanchard and Paul Hersey said in the 70s of the previous century. Yes, Joop? And the model we're going to discuss is called situational leadership. You see it here on the screen. Basically, it says when you lead people, you first need to diagnose what kind of leadership style they need from you. And the diagnosis is not only important for one person, you also need to look at the separate tasks that a person has. So for task number 1, a person might need a different leadership style than for task number 2. In the model, we will discuss 4 different leadership styles based on the amount of directive behavior that you use as a leader and the amount of supportive behavior that you use as a leader. Then we see 4 leadership styles called directing, coaching, supporting, and delegating. Now, when you diagnose what people need and you are flexible enough to use the different leadership styles, then you only need to match the right style with the right situation. We will do some cases, we will see some videos during the course, but we also do a lot of practical work. And of course, this is done via Zoom meetings or Microsoft Teams meetings. Ideally, this is done in classroom settings, and maybe in the future we will. But also virtually, we can do a lot of these things very practical. Yes, Joop? And when you know how to lead individuals, the last step will be, so what does that mean when you lead teams? And when we look at teams, we will see that teams normally go through certain stages of development. When you put a group of people together, they're not immediately a successful team. You have different phases. The first phase we call orientation phase. It's the phase where people are reasonably enthusiastic, but they don't know yet how to work as a team together. The last stage that the team is in is the production stage, hopefully. The team has a high morale, has a high productivity, but you're not immediately there when you start in orientation phase. You cannot jump immediately to production stage. Normally, first you go through a stage called dissatisfaction. That's the pain. In the beginning, you're enthusiastic. Then you suddenly find that things are not that easy. That the people in your team might not always be perfect. And there's conflict. And people are not happy anymore. And there's frustration. Without good leadership, a lot of teams stay in dissatisfaction stage. So what do you need from leadership in that stage to go to the next stage called integration, where morale and productivity go up? We will discuss that in the training. And then hopefully after you leave and after you conclude the training, you know exactly what is needed from leadership in the different stages of team development. Yes, Joop? So, summarizing, there will be a lot of topics when we talk about leadership. We'll talk about knowing yourself and leading yourself. We talk about leading others and use some important models there. And we talk about leading teams. My goal is always to make it as interactive as possible, to make it experiential. So that means that you feel what it means to be a good leader or a bad leader. It should be practical all the time. And I try never to be boring. I hate boring training myself. If it's boring, I cannot learn myself. So that's what I try, and I'll really do my best for it. And that is my presentation.
Thank you, Rob. This is exactly why you are one of our top teachers in the education we provide, making people smile when they learn a lot and making them work hard. Are there any questions regarding Rob's presentation? From anybody in the group? Then I suggest we move forward to Bob Magnus, Bob is in Wisconsin, USA. Bob is also on board with Oculus. Actually, we started the company many years ago. We both are very interested in the veterinary world, of course, but also very much in the business side of it. And Bob, the floor is yours.
Great. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Sounds good. Well, welcome everybody, and I can definitely attest to Rob's programs, which I've attended personally for a couple of the companies we run here in the United States, and they are fun, they are interactive, and probably most importantly, he gives you some of the tools that can really help you and your team move forward. So my name is Bob Magnus. I live here in the United States and halfway between Madison and Milwaukee, Wisconsin, or about 90 miles north of Chicago. And I have a passion for veterinary medicine and also a big passion for business, and really excited to join this program with everyone. So what we're going to work on in some of the segments that I'll be instructing is really focusing more on the fun and financials, you know, following up with the theme that you got to enjoy doing this. It has to be interactive for you to be able to get some good learning lessons and things that you can implement in your practice and in your business. So I'm an entrepreneurial at heart. I built several different companies. Currently, I sold my veterinary practice and now am consulting through Oculus throughout the United States, managing dogs, horses, and cats in different locations, and working with our friends in Europe as well as in Canada. When we jump into the program with you later this fall, we're going to look at financial statements. We're going to understand the numbers, which I must say earlier in my career I never looked at. I was one of those guys that just jumped in, and I thought if I worked harder, I would do better, and learned very quickly that if you really can understand the core numbers and you can actually understand the language of those numbers, you can be much more proactive in the things that you do. On your screen, you'll just see a summary of Module 5, which is one area that I'll be helping to share my experiences along the way in Module 3 and in Module 5. But as you learn about the basics of how we do our financial accounting, how we do reporting, you'll then start to look at what can I do with those numbers and how can I use those numbers to help improve my culture, improve the core values of my business, and actually decide through those leadership components, who do we want to be, where do we want to go, and strategically, what is best for our practice, what is best for our staff, and numbers can help tell part of that story. So my presentation to you is actually quite short because it's just a big picture look at my approach to helping you understand the basics of accounting, the basic of financials. We're going to show how they're all connected, and how they're all connected. The way we're going to do that is, again, very interactive through case reports. Certain things happen, here's the outcome, and what does that tell us? How can we tell a story using our financials? And taking those numbers and trying to learn how to be proactive with those using dashboards, KPIs, which stands for Key Performance Indicators, and strategically looking forward. In veterinary medicine, some of you are at the beginning of your career, others may be towards the end of the career. A lot of things are happening in the marketplace, and how can you position yourself well from a business perspective to get the greatest value for your practice and for your career? Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to work crazy hours, 7 days a week. Is what we want to do is help you work a little smarter. And by understanding those core concepts of the numbers and the financials, you'll be able to really be much more efficient with your time, a better quality balance of life, and of course, joining on to this program, I hope you have a lot of fun ahead because it will be a good time. And for someone to say having fun with numbers, if someone told me that 20 years ago, I thought they'd be crazy, but we're going to make that for you. We're going to have some fun, and we hope that you join us in the program. And I'd like to leave it open back to you, Joop, for any questions that someone may have, or if you'd like a little more definition.
Thank you, Bob. Can you stop sharing screen?
You bet.
Okay.
I hope.
We'll soon find out. There you are.
Well, what's really exciting, Joop, too, is in this whole program that you've and their team have designed, all of these pieces, all these different modules are interactive, and different aspects of each area are things that if you incorporate those into your business, I think you're going to be really, really happy. It's going to be a great program. It's exciting to be part of it.
Thank you. Well, I think it's also important to understand that these modules in itself have value. Following the modules, I try to explain that there is a logic sequence in these modules, but that doesn't mean that you cannot follow them or do them separately. We will come back to that. I would love to introduce the final speaker of today, Professor Merel Langelaar from Utrecht University. Merel and I started this course. Merel is the Vice Dean of Utrecht University and is responsible for the education program. She also has a history in veterinary practice herself. Merel, would you like to introduce yourself to the group and also explain a little bit about the topics that you are going to teach?
Yes, I will. Thank you very much, Joop. I'm going to be extremely short because it will leave time for discussion. And in a way, I only wanted to show just one little slide. And as a matter of fact, it has been said by others before me, and it's this one. Do you see a slide or a whole thing?
Yes, we do.
I think, well, I'm very lucky to organize this course with you because, first of all, I think I'm going to learn very much myself of all those speakers, and I'm very interesting to, throughout the models, hear about what they have to say. But one of the reasons that I organized this course with you, from my point of view, is that I had a career myself, which was not the most obvious one. I wanted to be a veterinarian like many of us did. And then I ended up in several jobs completely different from what I was thinking beforehand. I started with my own practice in the south of France. I didn't have anything to do with, I didn't know anything about marketing and such things. So I was very scared in the beginning having my own practice. And as a matter of fact, after 2 years, we had to resign and go back to the Netherlands because we were having happy times, but not earning a penny, to be honest. And it wasn't going to change. So then I went back to the veterinary faculty where I worked as a teacher and a veterinarian, but also I went into research, which I was very much interested in. And after that, I worked consequently in public health at the National Health Institute, in public human health, afterwards in advice at the National Health Council. And then before coming back to the faculty, I worked for more than 7 years in human health care in inspection and enforcement, which is in a way very, very different and in another way very similar to veterinary healthcare. And I'm now a professor in policy and impact and the Vice Dean of Education, as you already said. And as a Vice Dean, we started last year by investigating, sending out a questionnaire to all our alumni about what they think the master that we want to renew should look like. And we asked the veterinarians in the Netherlands what they learned and what they think that the young veterinarians learned pretty good and what they still miss. And they say, well, those young veterinarians, what they learn is to be a good veterinarian in a way, technically, and they have a lot of knowledge and about skills. Well, it's not routine, but it's okay. But what they really lack and what we also missed ourselves was training in communication and marketing. So that's, I think, one of the good reasons, and it was not the first time we heard it, because all of us, I think, well, maybe not all of us, but many of us, we started our studies wanting to be a veterinarian, and we think as a veterinarian as the guy in this picture, as somebody treating dogs or cows or whatsoever, and a little bit forgetting or not knowing and not realizing during the studies that being a veterinarian means that you have to interact with other people, that you have to learn your whole life, that you have a certain position within your team, within your practice, but also in society, and that you have a role as a professional, but also as a member of the profession. And that is what my chair is all about policy and impact and the position veterinarians have in society and the influence of veterinary sciences on society, and on the other hand, the influences of society on the veterinary profession. Things like, and that's what also is needed for our education and to educate young people to become a professional, thinking about developing a professional attitude, thinking about how do I want to be a veterinarian, what do I need to be a veterinarian, and it's related to communication and marketing, but it's also related to the more ethical problems that you will meet every day and that you not per se will realize. And it's also about thinking critically about what is it to be a good veterinarian, what is the quality of veterinary care, and what is quality, what does it mean to deliver good quality, and how do we discuss that with each other? What does it mean to make mistakes every day, little mistakes, big mistakes, and how do we speak to each other? How do we give feedback to each other about the mistakes we make? Is it the horror to make a mistake, or can we learn when we make mistakes? And I recently had an elective for the students about all these types of things, and I invited many different people from different fields. There was a flight safety instructor that told us about just culture and giving feedback and learning from mistakes, and there were people teaching us how to communicate, but also how to discuss with each other. And I think that is my position in this course. I very much want to make people think about the position they have as a veterinarian and as a veterinary professional within society. So I think I will stop here. I hope many people will join us in this journey we're going to make in the course, I think, which is going to be very interesting. I'm going to stop sharing my.
Thank you, Merel. Thank you for introducing yourself and showing where the bigger picture comes from. I would like to open the floor for everybody who is interested to ask questions regarding the course or regarding the topics that came up. The floor is open. Merel, your screen is still up.
Yeah, I tried to.
Is there anybody who has a question for one of the speakers, or for me, or for?
In general.
Or in general?
I'm going to leave. I'll be coming back because I'm not.
Well, it is a nice picture. Okay. Is there anybody who has any questions for us regarding this course or not? Otherwise, I'll start asking a few questions. Oops, there's Merel again. Okay. Rob, you've done those leadership courses for the veterinary profession, but also for completely different professions and professionals. Is there a difference whether you work with vets or with, I would almost say, normal people? Oh, Rob, you're muted, Rob.
Somebody muted me. So I'm mostly trained managers, first of all, in the veterinary pharmaceutical industry. And the difference between vets in practice and managers in the industry is that managers in the industry get a lot of training on communication and feedback and coaching. And I mean, they're still interested when I do training courses with them, but when I train veterinarians in practice, for them it's mostly all new. They never heard about team development. They never heard about situational leadership. And it's so helpful if you don't know anything about it. So I always prefer to train veterinarians in practice. I also train a lot of doctors in practice. That's a different story. I don't know why, but vets seem to be more open-minded when it comes to training and less snobbish. But maybe that's because I'm a vet and I feel more at ease with vets. I don't know. I also train a lot of totally different managers. Like one of my main clients over the last few years was Coca-Cola and KLM, Air France. And when you compare managers from those kind of industries with managers in the veterinary industry, there's not so much difference when it comes to leadership. The leadership principles are still the same, and also for the larger veterinary practices and the smaller veterinary practices. When it comes to diagnosing people and what they need from the manager, there's not much difference. Industries always want to hear the answer, we are special, and that you need to do a special training for KLM and a special training for Coca-Cola. But basically, leadership skills are leadership skills. Understanding yourself is important for all of us. But like I said, I really enjoy to work with vets. It's going back to my roots, and I feel very comfortable there.
Thank you. Thank you. Bob, working with these financials and making fun of it, that's quite that's quite difficult. I still find it very hard to understand these figures, but they do help me once I get a hang of it. What you also did is a lot of benchmarking, comparing practices. You even had a benchmarking company. Can you share with us what benchmarking is, and are you going to do anything with that during the course?
Yeah, benchmarking is comparing you to the norms within the industry, and that could be averages or benchmarks that are above average. And so what's nice is when you start to look at your financial information, you don't really have a good sense of how you're doing compared to others and where maybe the opportunities are for improvement. So we will use benchmarkings primarily on the financial statements and the income statement, so you can get a gap and an idea of where you are. Oftentimes the most valuable benchmarking, though, is really what we call a trend analysis, meaning you're benchmarking against yourself and building from there. So when we start to look at benchmarks, we look at both internal trends and analysis, as well as what's happening in the industry. And I guarantee you it will be fun. I think the biggest challenge has always been for most of us as veterinarians is learning a new language. You have to understand that there are several terms that mean the same thing for financial discussions. It's sort of like going into veterinary school that first year and learning a whole new language. I remember having challenges with histology and all the terminology and how to even pronounce the names. And, we'll get into those basics, but we're going to make it fairly simple and straightforward so that you can build on that well beyond the program.
Do you think it would be an issue that people can come from different countries and even completely different parts of the world? Does that have an influence on how you look at figures, and does that have an influence on the way you're going to teach?
Yeah, from a global perspective, numbers are numbers. It's how we categorize them that are a little different among countries and different regions, and also what we call them. So let me just give you an example. In the United States, we'll call sales or income as meaning the same thing, or in Europe, oftentimes it's called turnover. And so what we have to do is make sure we're always communicating with the same language. And it's really about being organized, because we all have money coming in, we have expenses and money going out, and at the end of the day, there's hopefully something left over, or else we're in trouble. But what we do proactively with what's left over is a strategy to help us build our culture within our practice, using the leadership skills, the teamwork, all of those components, because as I've become a lot older in the last few years and definitely getting more gray hair, I think the biggest lesson I've had is that if you have really high quality people and you build a fantastic culture, actually the numbers will really be much better than if you just focus on numbers. My goal is to help you integrate numbers proactively within your business.
No, I think that's very well and very nicely said, Bob, because it highlights how we see this course. We see this as an integrated part of all these tiny little bolts and nuts that fit together. And particularly in these times when it's so difficult to find vets, and you want to be the place where people want to work. You want the place where
Sure.
people are happy, where they want to be. And I'm not only talking about vets, I'm also talking about veterinary technicians. They're incredibly difficult to come by, to find them. And once you have them, to keep them motivated and keep them on your team. And then another thing that happens, which is something we discussed with Mike last time, is when the market is like it is now, you're very much tempted to hire anybody that you can find just to fill in a spot within your team.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest mistake you can make, because that could easily kill your culture. It could change the practice in a negative way. And those are all related and interrelated. And I think it's incredibly important to have this course which gives you the overview of where everything really fits in. Merel, I have maybe. Yeah, well, let's ask one more question to Merel and then see if there are people out there who also want to ask questions. Merel, what we discovered, the two of us, is that there are a lot of master students, veterinary students at Utrecht University, who in the new master would get the opportunity to do some parts of this course as part of their master course. Can you explain a little bit why you think this is important and how this can add value to the course?
Well, I think it's important for the students themselves, because they already realize that the world is bigger than just their veterinary practice and treating cats and dogs. So that is good, and we talked with several of them, and they're very, very eager to learn. They want to learn other skills than the technical veterinary skills. So for them, it's very interesting. And they will learn just from the routines and experience of the other people that attend the course, so the veterinarians or the people that will attend the course. So for them, it's very interesting. But I think on the other hand, it will also be interesting for the people attending the course, being a professional already, because I'm sure the students will ask questions that will make you think critically about what you're doing day by day, because we all have our routines and we all have our, well, we tend to become a little bit more focused or narrow visioned, whatever you would call it. But I think students are very good. They're young adults, and they can be critical, but also very open. And I'm sure they will ask many questions to the routine and experienced people in the course. So I think there will be a mutual benefit of students attending this course.
Yeah, I strongly agree, and that's also the reason why we decided to open this course for. I think we decided 20% of the people attending the course can be students, because we also want to make sure that we have a right balance. And what the right balance is, actually, we don't know, but we have to start somewhere, and that's the way we look at it. I would like one more time to open the floor for the guests who are here tonight to ask questions if they still have questions. If you have a question, please turn the camera on and ask a question.
Or write it in the chat if you want to. You can also
write it in the chat. Whatever. We are available on the website. You can find our email addresses. I think it's also important to. Oops, that's an interesting question coming in. Wait a minute, I'll open it. Oh, that's good. Okay, that's somebody who was on the chat. Sorry, who was on the team session, but had problems with the microphone. The question is, I wanted to do it from Denmark. I'm wondering how many foreign people are joining and what the minimum number is before you start. or better said, do I risk the course being expelled or not? Oh, sorry, I'm just trying to translate it straight away. So we go for a minimum of 25 people joining, which means 20 professionals and 5 students, a max, or a minimum, sorry. Then we will start. We have people signing up. There is still time until the 1st of August. And of course, there will be a debate around that time if we have 22 or 23 or 27. Well, 27 will not be a discussion, but that's something I do not know yet, to be honest. We are very determined to get this going, and we do understand that it's always difficult to get these courses going because people rather go to more clinically oriented courses. We do, however, think that this is also a clinic-oriented course in a way that you learn to diagnose your practice and your company, and that you are learning new skills and new tools that may not help you in the clinical part as in the hands-on part, but it will help you to improve your clinic, and it will help you to improve people getting better clinical skills and getting a better staff. That's what we are aiming for. So up till now, I think we have people registered from different countries. It's absolutely not only from the Netherlands. So that is growing. The numbers are growing. We are not there yet, but we still have time. And I do know from experience, from a long experience, I should say, that vets are very, very slow in signing up for educational programs. And I see Bob smiling. Well, we've been there. We have done quite a lot of courses everywhere around the world, whether it's the United States or Canada or Australia or Germany or China or New Zealand, and it always was an issue that people sign up late. So we will keep the doors open, but we of course hope that people sign up quickly now, so we know where we are. So yes, to be honest, there is an option that it will not happen if we do not have enough students. Not only from the financial point of view, but also that you need to have a quorum. You need to have a group of people to talk with. You need to have groups that you can work in. We need to have a critical mass, I would almost say.
Anything I would like to add to that, Joop. I very much hope that people will give it to themselves, because I would be so happy for them. As Rob already said, in industry, people get these type of courses every time. And we don't have it in veterinary clinic in general. I've been working for the government in all the institutions where I work. It's all governmental work, and there also we had those type of courses, and I learned so much about it. And that's why I also think that is an interesting course for clinicians, which I would be really happy to. Well, they would give it to themselves, and also to people working in other environments where leadership skills and strategy making is being asked of you. So I think it's a little bit the type of things you will learn is that you before starting it you may not realize what you will gain from it. I think we have a question coming in, and I think that's exactly one for you, Merel, which is, how are you going to deal with the theme of sustainable development goals in the veterinary profession, sustainability and the future of our profession? I think that's exactly that fits you like a glove, that question. Yeah, well, that fits like a glove, but I will not have an answer straight away. That's the whole thing. But I think it's a very, very interesting question, and it's the type of discussion we are having, at least at our faculty. For example, how do we veterinary professionals in large animals fit in with the circular animal husbandry and circular agriculture, which is a very important theme. And we know what they call the protein transition, and going to maybe to less meat production and more production of other or animal proteins like insects and things like that. So there is indeed the theme of sustainable development goals is very interesting, and our position as a veterinarian and how we can help the things to develop in a right and sustainable way, I think is a very important question and something to discuss. I don't know if we're going to give answers during this this course, but I think it's a very interesting thing to discuss to start with.
Well, I think it fits perfectly well in the first module, because we are going to talk about what's happening in the marketplace at large. So it's and that's absolutely not only going to be companion animal or equine, but for sure ook a farm animal industry. And what is the strategy? We with Oculus, we do strategic meetings with farm animal practices who mainly at the moment it's dairy farm, but that can also change. And we do a lot of these discussions where we cannot provide straight away the answers, but we start to ask the right questions. And another thing I would like to add to this is, if you or if anybody else from the students has a good idea on getting a teacher on this particular topic, and I mean, we can go to Wageningen University, for instance, to talk about circular agriculture. Then we can easily, we have every module, we have one evening where we come back to the content we discussed, and we ask the students, what would you like to be discussed again? What would you like to add to the discussion? And is there somebody you would like to take with you to answer questions? Or do you have an idea? Can we invite somebody? And that's where we, that's how we try to tackle this. So there are lots of options to get this going. Yeah, and there's another thing about sustainability. You can somehow relate to the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, but there is also, of course, the what at least in the Netherlands we call a sustainable profession. How do we keep ourselves thriving and working with pleasure, and how do we keep professionals in the veterinarians in our profession? Because as we already discussed, there is a shortage in the Netherlands, but also in other countries, and things that we're doing research into, but which are also very interesting and important, is to keep the people going in a practice and having the right work-private balance and things like that, but getting energy from the work. And how do we keep them from the work? So how do we retain? I know many of the corporates are working very much about retention of the professionals in the veterinary profession. So that's another thing about sustainability, which is also important for us as professionals, I think. We had Jean-Philippe answered for the thank you for the answer, Merel, regarding sustainability. Are there any other questions? Because we are 5 minutes late. If there are no other questions, thank you all for joining. And of course, hoping to see you in September when we start. We're very much looking forward to it. Take care, be healthy, and hope to see you soon. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.